Welcome back, and today another video about kitchen knives and about those two very special kitchen knives. And first of all, what it is, the maker of those knives is called Cangshan. It's Chinese maker. Those two specific knives are so-called Thomas Keller signature series. There's a whole line of those knives, from smaller paring knives up to even larger chef's knife, through utility knives and bread knives and other tools and so on. So why those knives? What's so special about those knives? So first of all, the answer is that they made out of very special steel, which is not quite common for kitchen knives. So one quick step back, and then we will talk about those knives, about their features, how they constructed, kind of like a review and my impression on them. I did use those knives in the kitchen, and I can compare to traditional ones. So first of all, I am, as a knife guy, let's call it this way, I started to like kitchen knives a lot as well, and started to cook way more recently. I always liked to cook, but recently, not traveling that much, cooking a lot, and I started to upgrade my kitchen knife set with a lot of other nicer quality kitchen knives, and you've seen some of those on my channel. So the next question comes up: when you upgrade your EDC knives to the better ones, and upgrade to your kitchen knives, the question comes up, what kind of steel are they made of? And most common steel for traditional European kitchen knives would be X50 CR 13. So for example, this Wusthof knife is a classical European kitchen knife. It's a very good one, very old. I use it for, I think, more than 10 years. And that's a steel which it is made of. And usually it is less hardened steel comparing even to your EDC knife. So we're talking about hardness on Rockwell scale about 56, maybe up to 58, depending on the actual maker and manufacturer of a knife. And again, within this marking X50, actual steels may differ a little bit, but so on. But anyway, what you're getting as a concept, you're getting the knife which is relatively strong, but it's so easy to sharpen, and the knife which will not chip. It's not too hard to chip when, for example, you meet with the cutting edge, you meet like a small bone, or for example, even bread crust. This knife will survive. It will have a small bent thing which would be easy to resharpen or fix some other way. So that's your European traditional idea, that and also the knife is forged, which makes steel a little bit better, and it moves any type of gaps between the steel and the handle scales a little bit further from a cutting area, so that this bolster, integrated bolster, forged bolster, has its own purpose. Japanese knives, and again, don't want to talk too much about Japanese knives. You see them on the market. They have different shapes, different steels. A lot of them are wider. Sorry, step back. A lot of them are sharpened way thinner, and they have way thinner cutting edge. Again, different sharpening angle. Here on traditional European ones, you don't have very acute sharpening angle. That's why they hold a little bit better with that steel. Japanese ones will be way thinner. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them will be of a harder steel, but that's a different concept. You actually are not supposed to cut anything hard with those knives. You're supposed to cut like a fish or veggies or meat, but the knife should kind of glide through that and would not meet any resistance. You would not press too hard towards the chopping table. That's the idea behind Japanese knives, very thin ones. and so on. So here comes the general idea. Can you make a kitchen knife out of even better steel than some of the Japanese on the market, better than VG10? Make it out of powder steel. So powder steel, so you can make it thinner, you can make it even sharper, let's call it this way, but it will still hold. It will hold the edge, it will not chip, it will hold the edge for very, very long time, and will not be too flexible and so on. Even for the thinner one, it will be hardened. It will be way, way more harder knife, and more, in theory, more longer running between the sharpening cycles. And recently what we see, we have a few of those knives on the market, knives made out of very, very good steels, powder steels. We see knives out of SVN S35 steel. We see knives out of M390. We see knives from other really, really good steel. We see knives from Damascus, for example. I also have a knife from Bulat steel. That's another mixed steel which is hardened up to, this one is like 64 HRC. Does it work for the kitchen? To some extent, yes. So back to those two specific knives. What is specific about those two knives? And if you take a closer look at the markings here, you will see. So it's Cangshan Thomas Keller collection knives made out of Swedish Dama steel RWL 34. This is the actual steel which they use, RWL 34. It's a powder metallurgy steel, so-called older generations, but it's still good. And this maker says it's hardened to HRC, Rockwell scale hardness, 61 plus minus 2. And then there's a model number, and then there's NSF logo here on this side. So let's go through what it means for us. And by the way, another logo and Thomas Keller signature on this side. All right. So what it means for us, that comparing to this, which would be 56 plus minus 2, this one would be 61 plus minus 2. And by the way, plus minus 2, it usually means that they harden that, and when they grind it, then they sharpen it towards the edge. It may get tempered down a little bit, so it will get a little bit lower hardness per individual knife, and on the spine it may be still okay, still like 61 or maybe a little bit more than a 61. So okay, and another important thing about this knife, very important thing, that comparing to the other knives which I've seen, which are made out of really, really hard steel, for example, like this one, you see this one has scales over the tank construction. Those knives are pretty much one of the few which I've seen out of those very good steels, which is forged bolster type of construction. What it means that there's a big machinery somewhere which forges down, most likely this part of the blade is this very good RWL 34 steel, then probably another steel over here, they are forged somehow, fused somehow together here, and then they forged to create this shape of the blade with integrated bolster and a real bolster. Then of course it is ground, handle is made, sharpened, polished, finished, and so on. All of those nice stuff is happening, but this is integrated forged knife with integrated bolster. That's rare for those very hard steels. So that's what makes this knife pretty much unique, and that's what makes this knife expensive. This knife is not cheap, even for Chinese made, which is supposed to be a little bit cheaper production cost, the labor cost. This knife, you can get this knife, for example, let's take as a reference the chef's knife. The lowest price you can find it would be at Costco for $150. That's not cheap, but at the same time, if you take full-size Wusthof or full, similar size Shun Japanese, you would be paying pretty much the same price, but not for the powder steel. For a good knife, yes, of a different steel, which will not be wow type of thing. Like this one is smaller knife, it has less than $100. This one is a Santoku version of this knife. It costs $10 less. On Amazon, they cost a little bit more. So you're pretty much paying for that steel, and of course you're paying for design, for Thomas Keller name on that, if you respect the guy and so on, if you like his recommendation. So that's what it is. That's why this knife is very special. It pretty much, I don't see any competition to this knife on the market at the moment. For the price, you're getting very good steel and so on. But that's again, if you're looking for super steel knife in your kitchen, that's your good choice. And now let's talk about all of those features, what I see in this knife, what works for me quite well, what didn't work for me in those knives. One more time, does it worth buying or not? So first of all, let's go around the knife in general. So those come in individual boxes like this, very good packaging boxes of walnut, magnetic. You see those magnets here, magnetic lead, very nice packaging, very premium. So that's the cutlery information here. Yeah, I operate out of California for US market. Pretty good, pretty good. Second, let's go around the knife and see what it is. As I said, integrated bolster construction. Bolster is angled, and I'll come back to this again. The spine of the knife is really not that thick. So let's quickly measure that. So that would be 0, and over here it is 2.5 millimeters, which is not too thick, and it tapers down all the way through the knife spine towards the tip. The width of the knife would be quite comfortable, 50 millimeters, about 2 inches. That's good. And what I like about the knife, for them to be very, very slicey, I like the thin grind, and it's really, really thin. As you can see, I'll try to catch the angle here, so you'll see how thin this is. It is really, really thin. So let me try to get it for you. So it will be 0.2. Very good. With this thin spine, actually, and thin grind and tapering, it is pretty hard. I'm trying to bend it, and it only bends a little bit towards the tip. It's really, really, you can feel that it's harder than the other cheaper knives. So for example, even that Wusthof would be about the same thickness. I can bend it way more easy. I don't want to bend it all the way in, but I feel that it's a little bit more springy. This one's a little bit harder. Same for this knife. It feels pretty stiff and hard. Okay, so this is the profile of the blade. Good portion, good, kind of like a straight portion, belly, a tip, good tip, good sharpness, and very good cutting edge out of the box. I resharpened both of them, but they were very, very sharp. To my very picky, like a knife guy, sharpening expectations. A lot of even pocket knives, kitchen knives, they come with a good edge, good sharpness out of the box. This one was very, very sharp, really like a shaving sharp out of the box, with a very, very thin grind, as I said, and very good sharpening angle for at about, even I think the manufacturer says it's a 16 per side, or maybe 14, I don't remember. You can look it up always in the description. So it's really, really acute angle, less than traditional European knives. The spine is almost straight, as you can see for this knife, and it goes into the handle, and it makes this like a kind of curvature profile all the way on top of a knife. And even on the box, they try to kind of give you like a sketch of this knife. It follows that design with this curved top line of this, the whole spine of the blade. Kind of nice design idea. Okay, then you get in the handle. You're getting full tank construction with a wide, really wide tank over here. It's kind of like also angled rear bolster, one pin, some kind of like a plastic. It's supposed to be good plastic handle, very simple ones, and you have this pin with Thomas Keller signature inside it. So you can find online those ones with white plastic and blue plastic, but most of them come with a black plastic. I think it looks okay. And then the belly of the handle is good. The balance is a little bit heavy for the handle heavy, but when you pinch grip it, because this one is like a longer and a lighter blade, you can control the knife quite well. It doesn't kind of it's not too heavy on the handle like some other knives which I have. Speaking about those logos, you've seen maybe another video where I said for some other Chinese knives, they say this is the steel, blah blah blah, this is the material, and it's not true. With this knife, everything, the way it's done, is true. It has to be true because it's NSF certified. National Safety or Foundation, I think, yeah, something like that. So the NSF, what it stands for, you can look it up, and you can literally look it up on the NSF website, that they did certify this knife to be like a food safe. That's pretty much what it is. So it means that for some places where the certification is required, maybe for some professional kitchens, you have to have all the equipment somehow certified, and that's what it says. This knife is certified for professional kitchens, for professional use. And at the same time, what it means that whatever materials are used here, they are also certified to be true. So it means that this is a true Swedish, made in Sweden by Dema Steel, is a maker, RWL 34 steel. It means that this is truly that steel. And hopefully it means that the hardness levels are also validated and so on. But I don't think the hardness levels testing is included into the certification by this organization, but the materials for sure they are included. On the sides of the blade we see satin finish, but it's a very, very glossy satin finish. I see those marks, satin finish marks, which go like this, but it's very, very high grit finish, so it's almost reflective. And as you see, I'm filming with a not such a professional light, and here you see there's a lot of reflections. You can see maybe reflection of my window, and even maybe a little bit of myself, my hands over here. So it's a satin finish steel. It's not a mirror finish, but it's very, very glossy one. Same here. That's, I think, about it, about the knife, what it is. A similar thing on Santoku. Of course, Santoku is a little bit shorter, and it has those gratings or whatever it's called on both sides. Also works quite well as a general knife. Same handle makes it, again, a little bit handle heavy, but not super well balanced. But anyway, good knife, good Santoku knife for the purpose. So that's my overall impression, that those knives are very good, and if you want to get them, if you want to have very good steel on those knives, get them. So then I have to criticize those knives a little bit. I have to criticize those knives because I use them and I know what it is. So first of all, let's start. You know what? Let's start with the chef's knife. Good blade, good sharpness, really thin, really acute angle. As soon as you're gonna start using this knife on harder chopping board, like a harder plastic maybe, this angle will not hold it, even if it's a super nice steel. If you're not gonna do this, and that's gonna be stupid, and just use this knife only on a good wooden cutting boards, this angle holds really well, really well. I ruined this not angle, the edge with this specific angle. I ruined this edge once. I resharpened it to be 18 degrees per side, so it's now total 34, and I did cut it with for a long time. It holds really well, better than my other knives. So be careful with this edge. I would even say to the maker, to Cangshan, if they somehow would watch it, yes, you can achieve super sharpness with this steel, with this angle, but it's less practical. You gotta, the person who buys that out of, I don't know, out of just the design, for example, they don't know anything about the steel. They say, oh, it's very sharp, I want to cut everything with this. They will ruin the edge, and they will say, wow, I paid so much money for this knife and blah blah blah. So for me, for the knife guy, I understand what I did wrong, and I understand how to deal with this and how to get as much as I can out of this knife if I want to. That's one thing. For general public, no. And it's really sharp. I think I just cut myself a little bit. Okay, another thing which I did not like about this knife is the profile. Let me quickly compare it to the knife which I like. So this one is, you've seen this knife. This shape of a knife is more or less called French chef's knife shape. This shape of a knife is called more or less German shape of a knife. You see the difference? This one has a more like a straight, not a straighter, like a less curvature here. This one has more curvature here, but more like a straight portion here. So that's the difference. I think this knife is more controllable, and it allows you to be more precise when you would be cutting with the tip, when you're doing some fine work with the tip. You don't have to raise your, for example, this is the cutting board. You don't have to raise it too high to get something cut like this. With this knife, yes, you can chop quite well, or even with the rocking motion, cut everything quite well. But if you want to work with the tip of a knife, you have to raise it too much. So you pretty much have less control, less visibility what's cutting with the tip. So that's my negative, kind of tiny negative feedback on this one. Another thing which I did not like about this knife is that the handle curves down. What it means is that my fingers here, especially if I hold it further out or over this belly, they will be closer to the cutting board. This one is a little bit more straight. You see, it's straight on the back. It has this gap here. But anyway, it's not compared. Let's not compare it to this one. Let's compare it to another knife which we started comparing from. You see here again, the handle, the spine of the handle goes a little bit up. Here it goes down. So this one even being more narrow for the blade. This knife controls better, and you have less issues with fingers touching the cutting board. With this knife, it's not really like an issues, but once you're getting there, you're trying to avoid contact of this with the cutting board. Just avoid it. It's nothing bad happens if you do it, but you're just trying to avoid it, and then you feel like less comfortable in those rocking motions. You don't want to go too far. Again, you're trying to control yourself a little bit more, and that's you know, you're getting less relaxed when you use the knife. So those are pretty much 3 main issues which I see with this knife. It's too good, too sharp, the edge is too sharp and too thin. Let me laugh at this a little bit more. The tip is because of that curvature, is harder to control when you hold the knife and do the chopping with this, and the handle curves down instead of, in my opinion, I like it to be a little bit up. So those are cons for this knife. For this knife, of course, the tip thing doesn't apply because it's a different different geometry. It's Santoku. But for the handle and for overall sharpness and angle of the sharpening of the out-of-the-box knife, same thing applies. What also applies for both of them is that super highly polished satin finish is, I should say, it's less resistance to anything. So first of all, you can get a pitting, like you can get some stains on even on this good steel. It's not rusting, it's non how to put it this way, it's called stainless, but it's also non-rusting steel, right? It will get, but don't get me wrong here, stainless steel may still get some stains, and this steel will get stains but not rust. Stains but not rust, especially with this polish. And of course, scratches will be on this knife easily, even with a harder steel. Tiny scratches over this high grade satin finish will appear very easy on those knives. So those are small issues which I see on those knives, but in general, for this price, with this steel, with this construction and certification, it's a very good professional knife for even for professional usage in the kitchen of the restaurant or somewhere else, or for home. It is very good performing knife with this super thin blade and wide. It slices so well. If you want to get those knives, so what I would recommend also for you to do, of course, they can be washed in dishwasher, but I would never recommend doing this. You will ruin the edge, you will ruin the hardness and so on. Store them carefully. Store them carefully, don't let them scratch, don't let them bang towards each other anyway. If you can get some sort of protection for the knife, I make my own protective sleeves like this usually. It's just two pieces of leather with which is stitched. So this how the how this specific sleeve will protect the knife. Now you can put it in a box, in a drawer. It will stay sharp, it will not scratch anything. And then of course with this thin, this very thin edge, try to maintain it as long as you can before the sharpening. That's a general knife people concept which you as a kitchen cook chef also know. You should know this. Try to maintain the edge as long as you can before full resharpening. Try to use leather strops, try to use honing rods. So for those specific ones, I don't recommend using typical metal honing rod, which comes with the knife sets quite often. Use ceramic one. Those ones are cheap. The ceramic is harder. It's high grit, so you can use this honing rod quickly, kind of restore the sharpness of this very hard and thin edge in the kitchen. So that's my recommendation. So store them well, maintain them well, and they will perform really well. They will outperform your regular German or French steel, whatever is used in the regular traditional European knives. This knife is, yeah, step above. I have to say it. This is very good knife. Yeah. No reason, if you can, try it and see for yourself. And of course, out of those two, I would recommend the bigger one. For Santoku, I'm like, I don't like those European implementations of Santoku. I like true Japanese Santoku a little bit more, and we'll talk about it in the next videos. I would say this knife is very good, especially if you want to be slicing something large, like cabbages, large beets, large carrots or whatever it is, even the big meat, this will be a very, very good performer in the kitchen, especially with this much of the cutting power in here. All right, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for a little bit more on the kitchen knives videos, and then I will come back to the EDC category, and I have a few very interesting things which I recently acquired. We'll talk about them. One more time, thank you, have a good one.